Hearing. Mike, do you have any comments on this?
This is on for public hearing. I do not, all my comments have been addressed at this point.
Rich?
All engineering comments have been addressed, Mr. Chairman.
Pat?
Likewise, Mr. Chairman, they have addressed all the site planning issues.
Does anyone from the audience and the public want to be heard on this? Carmel Fire Department.
Mr. Chairman, we're going to keep the public hearing open after tonight. We're not going to close the public hearing.
We'll keep it open.
Yep.
That's correct.
Okay. So no comments. You heard our attorney. We're going to leave it open.
The only thing, Mike, I don't know if you want to discuss the issue relative to the two-way, that's still at issue, which is why we're leaving the public hearing open.
And does it have to go to the zoning board also?
That's
So
it.
we're going to leave it open until it goes to the zoning board?
That's
I
right,
assume.
yep.
Okay.
We're scheduled for the zoning board to appear next
Okay,
week.
so that's the intent of leaving it open until then.
Just to touch on the two-way traffic issue, immediately after our last meeting with the planning board, TD Bank had reached back out to us to say that before they relinquished their right to two-way access, they wanted us to have a traffic engineer examine the two-way traffic on the property, particularly related to the amount of two-way traffic that exists. We know from Carmel Fire Department knows from obviously occupying the property how much traffic goes back and forth. It appears to be minimal. But TD is, looking towards the future in whether or not there's some subsequent tenant that comes after them, if that's going to be an issue from them from that perspective. But also because the pandemic has put a lot of use on the drive-through. So, their focus has been over the last few months on the drive-through because that's what's getting the primary bank traffic. Again, we haven't noticed a significant increase of people using that. And just so the board is aware, or just to refresh your recollection, that easement, that access point currently goes through the Carmel Fire Department parking lot and then hooks back up to permit traffic to go behind the bank and then into the bank parking area. It could circulate and then go back out to 52. Frankly, you have to be aware of that to know that, there is a right there. But we're going to have our traffic engineer go out there, do an analysis using cameras, taking video of that traffic circulation. We're going to do that on a Friday, which is their highest traffic day use. We'll get that information, we'll circulate it to TD, and if the proposal is in fact to have it remain, obviously we'll supply all that stuff to the board and deal with that issue appropriately.
Sounds reasonable. I want to thank you, the fire department and yourselves responded very well to our comments that we brought up at the last few meetings, so thank you for that. So we're going to leave this open and we're going to refer it to the zoning board.
Great.
Thank you.
Since the last submission, we have continued the study of the architectural drawings. We are prepared to present those renderings that were submitted at the last submission and the materials if the planning board does wish to do so
Yeah.
tonight.
Sure, if you're ready for it, of course.
Eric Nyler from H2M will be presenting.
Very nice. I think he put that there on purpose, because there's a camera right there that can hit it. I think. I could be wrong, but isn't that right?
No, you're right. Yeah.
Sorry.
I have reasons for what I do sometimes. Thank you.
Sorry.
Good evening. Eric Nyler with H2M. What you're looking at, which I'll have to work from my own memory of what we did, are the preliminary colored renderings of the main facade of the building as seen from Vink Drive. And the basic idea is that we're going to be using an architectural concrete masonry unit, which is the size of a block like you see there, but it's colored to look like brick. And so we're going to have the plan is to have a custom color matched to the brick that's on the building now. So actually, one of the samples, I only have one sample board, but I'd be happy to leave it here with you if you'd like. The sample board has the brick that we matched to the building, and I will have the ACMU color matched to that color, so that it's sort of all tied back to some of the original material on the building. We're also using another color of ACMU, the base course you see there, and a trim band up high, and we're proposing a sort of a rough split face for that. We'll give a little texture, a little grounding. It's kind of a nice traditional way to anchor a building to the ground. Shingle roof, 50-year shingle roof, asphalt shingles. We're going to use a little touch of metal roof on the new tower, and on the radio room, little shed roof, or two-part roof there on the radio room by the bays. And that'll tie it back to the metal roof that's on one of the forms, the entry form that you can't see in this, but it's on the Route 52 side of the building, original part of the building. Not fully transparent glass doors on the bays. Those are just a problem waiting to happen with fading of paint. But there'll be some visibility, some connection to the outside. People, a little bit of visibility, but it's also a safety factor. And again, we're going to use the ACMU material to reskin the entire building except for a limited portion of the existing building on the north side where the brick is pretty okay. There's just no reason to redo that. And that's kind of the overview of the intent of the materials and the look of the building. It'll be an appropriately textured and colored building for a civic building in this community and this area.
What size will the ACMU composites be?
It'll be that size right there, 8 by 16. But it'll look a lot different than that, but that's the module of it.
I personally think this is a nice step forward for our downtown revitalization, and, Carmel, as you know, is going through that, and I think this is really a good start for us in the town of Carmel.
Great. I have the elevations on the other side if you want to, they're just head on. Maybe I'll give a little sense of, I just brought from one side.
Is it on this board?
Yeah, we have this, yeah, we're looking at it right here.
Yeah, sorry. This is kind of, so the camera won't see this, but this is the one that I was kind of put on a different board than I meant to. So that's just kind of.
You're gonna have to go back to the microphone, please, I'm sorry.
So that's just a kind of dead-on view of the front, the Vink side of the building with the bays and the new tower form and the re-siding of the re-skinning of the rest of the building, and trying to blend the fuel tank into the front of the building there.
Where's the fuel tank? You mentioned the fuel tank? Bottom
Right next
left?
to that last bay on the left.
On the left, right?
Right, and we've removed some windows that were nearby. That was a comment we got it's a safety requirement.
Do you have a rendering of what it'll look like from Route 52?
I don't have it with me, but I could certainly bring it the next time I'm here.
But you're really not changing Route 52 side.
Not really. We're
Skinny.
except we're infilling two of the doors with composite panel material, and we're not completely sure about how many windows we're going to have in that, because we're still kind of programming that space with with Mike and his committee.
What is the fuel oil tank for?
That's for refilling the trucks.
For trucks. Is there
if it's permissible by code. Is there any screening you could put there? Because you have a really nice looking elevation across the front, and the tank just sits there, and it's like, what is it doing there?
I asked the same thing at the last meeting.
So the fuel tank is placed on the southern side so that it does not conflict with the TD Bank traffic that's happening on the north driveway. It's an easy access in. It's a one-way driveway at that location. It's an easy access in to stop, fuel up, and then exit off of Vink Drive. If we were to provide some sort of additional screening, like a fence, if you do it on 3 sides, you require a gate. The gate is now going to pull into the drive aisle, which is going to potentially cause some clearance conflicts with the fire truck and the parking spaces. If we would provide maybe a fence only on one side, like Eric had previously mentioned, there is a limited distance for the hose of the fuel dispenser, which is mandated by the proximity of doors and windows to the fuel tank. So we're only required to have an X linear feet of a hose. To put another obstacle in front of that way is a nuisance and a little bit of an obstacle for filling it up. It's a volunteer fire department. We hope this addition makes their actions more efficient, that they can do it in a timely manner. An existing fence or putting in a proposed fence, although would screen it, I'm not quite sure if the aesthetic value is really going to be much more than a fuel tank, which we propose to be beige, which will work with the design vernacular of the building, and red bollards, which again we'll use in the same color palette as the existing building.
Does it have to say diesel across the front of it?
I do not believe so. I will double check that. We did a lot of research to make sure that the tank color was allowed to be beige. They do want it to be a lighter color just so that you can see rust, so that you don't lose efficiency of the fuel by having it be a darker color that will heat up. But New York State does allow you to have it be a different color other than white.
And what are the dimensions of the tank?
The dimensions are 48 inches of the actual tank, and then it sits on saddles beneath. And I don't recall the length of the tank, but I do know that it is accurately shown on the drawings. I do have the details here with myself, though, that I can pull those for you.
Is there spill containment underneath it?
Is there, I'm sorry?
A spill containment? Under the tank?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would have to check with one of our engineers to get you that exact answer. That's something that we can do.
A lot of the tanks have it built into them now.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's in
Just
there.
as long.
Yep.
I mean, I'm with you on the fence, because I wouldn't want to see a fence there. My thought, and this is just my thoughts, is more of a 2.5 sided shed, right and left sides, with an open double door that doesn't have to go all the way up, so you can still see the tank, and then a sloped roof over the top of it. I don't know if it'll take up too much space, but that's, yeah, I agree with you on a fence. I wouldn't want to see a fence there.
Yeah, the concern is just the gate. It's the opening up into the drive aisle. Obviously, it's one way, so they need to be able to fuel both sides of the fire truck. They're not able to go in one way or the other to make sure the proximity is closest. And although we believe that the proposed parking count, which is 48, is able to meet the requirements of the fire department, we would not want to reduce that parking count to accommodate a structure in that area.
I wonder if it'd be, might be helpful, maybe, you know, it's, even though we're showing it as though this is a prominent side of the building, of course, it's on Vink, not on the main road. And maybe it'd be useful, again, when I come back, I'll bring a shot from Glen Ide Avenue if you want. In fact, I'll just do that so we can look at that. But you may be surprised by that shot that you can't really see this tank that much.
Sure.
So maybe that'll help us get to a conclusion about that.
You're only going to see it from actually Bank.
Well, I believe so, but I think that, you know, the camera doesn't lie, so
Yep.
we can look at that when we do the rendering.
And the properties across the street is a vegetated area, which has the cemetery on the other side, and then Scoops, which is a seasonal establishment.
And I'm good. I think it's a good
Since
start, a
we're,
really good start.
I think it's a great start, and I think most of our comments, if not all, were addressed. But as Joe mentioned, we're going to leave this open as it goes to the zoning board, so we need a motion to send to the zoning board.
I'll make a motion to send the applicant to the zoning board.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Nice improvement. Yeah, I have it.
I think you already did. Didn't they already stamp a plan for you last meeting? Denied?
We did not get an actual stamp.
Okay, sorry.
It's COVID exchange of papers, but if you, we can do.
We can do it right now.
Do you need to stamp every sheet or just the first?
Just the front sheet.
So the first sheet is the last.
Of course, it's like that.
Story of my life.
No, just the site plan.
Thank you very much.
Next on the agenda is the Teal Door Counseling Center at 18 Miller Road.
Still with it.
Oh, I'm sorry. Next on the agenda is Stillwater Business Park, 105 Stillwater Road. Mike, your comments, please?
Yep, the applicant proposes to merge 3 lots, remove the existing house, it's a pre-existing non-conforming 2-family, and a small garage, legalize the existing rear storage building, relocate a storage building, add a large storage building, and all bring the entire site into compliance. They'll need 1 variance from the zoning board. The board had issues at the last meeting discussing the neatness of the site. I went out to the site with Chairman Paper, and we found it to be cleaned up substantially. The variances needed for the rear yard, 30 feet is required, 25 feet are provided, 5-foot variance is required. The tree buffer, they extended it across by the scales. I just don't know if you want to ask for that to be increased in density. It looks like it's 1 or 2 trees deep, but if we could get more screening there, there's houses right across the street. Will there be any outdoor storage areas that are not fully inside the building? If they are, just show it on the plat so we can get variances if needed. And the project should be referred to the ECB for comments. There's wetlands in the area.
Thank you. Rich?
So, general comments that were provided, the referrals were noted by the applicant to the County Health, Mahopac Fire Department, Town of Carmel Highway. Permits from Highway, Town of Carmel Highway, DEC were noted. They did note that the New York City DEP permit, protection of watershed rules and regulations, were not, they didn't think it was necessary. It hasn't proven that there's any limiting distance to reservoirs and reservoir stems. Also, there's going to be selective clearing along the right-of-way in DEP property, so I think you just need to double-check that and relook at that. They know they need to have a stormwater pollution prevention plan. They provided site distances. They need to provide profiles of all the various driveways. They have provided easement information. It should be reviewed by council. Maintenance agreement, they've noted the comment. Grading utilities, they have top and bottom of wall elevations have been provided. However, one of the walls, at least according to the drawing, is 11.3 foot tall. That will need to be certified by a structural engineer, and a safety fence most likely will need to be installed on top of it. Drainage system and erosion sediment control, the applicant has noted it would be in a future submission. They provided a layout and traffic circulation plan. And for details, all curbs and sidewalks must meet the specifications provided in Town of Carmel Town Code, should be installed per section 128 of the code. And the asphalt in the area has been provided. Top layer should be 2 inches, not 1.5. Binder course 3 and not 2.5. And those are my comments. They've addressed most of them. There's just a couple of minor ones, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Rich. Pat?
So the applicant's actually done a very good job of responding to the comments that were delivered at last month's meeting. A lot of issues simply required clarifications. As was indicated, they have made a few modifications. So the biggest issue was how this site was going to be used. In fact, it will be used as a private storage facility, not a self-storage facility that's kind of open to the public. It will be used in conjunction with the adjacent properties, so there'll be cross easements to allow that to occur on the property that Joe will have to take a look at. As Mike and Rich indicated, the landscaping in front of the property has been expanded. Those site distances have been improved at the driveway locations. They have touched on the architecture of the building, which will be similar to the adjacent Liffey Van Lines building in terms of color and material and so forth. All of the issues with respect to circulation on the site have been clarified, truck movements. They have addressed additional loading doors on the building themselves. And again, a lot of the sort of plan information that was not on the original drawing is now on the drawing. So they've, as I said before, done a good job of bringing the drawing up to snuff. As Mike indicated, they do need a variance for this application, though.
Thank you. Comments from the board?
I just have, I think the plans look nice, and the efforts made so far are commendable. Thank you. I just have one question. You mentioned in your application, and it's mentioned in our consultants, that some customers would have access to this building, control that. Could you just explain that?
Right, so the primary lessee of the site is Liffey Van Lines. So there may be users of the vehicles, I guess people who are renting the vehicles for storage purposes might have kind of controlled access to the site. This would not be open public access. This would be known entities that were coming through that were clients of the applicant.
That's all I was, yeah, good, thanks.
So can you tell us about what this new, I believe it's 60,000 square foot building is going to look like? Because I'm not sure if we're going to need to get involved architecturally, or if it's going to be, you know, what kind of structure it's going to be.
Yeah, so again, this is going to match the style, the kind of modular nature, the color scheme of the other modular storage buildings that are there on the site. The beige and red motif is what they'll be going with. And again, it'll be a similar style to what we saw on the site as far as a modular storage building. I have the architectural elevations.
That'd be good.
Could you also show it on the other one too, please, so the public can see it? Thank you.
So as you can see, doors have been added in our initial submission. We had a couple of doors at the upper elevation, a couple at the lower elevation. We've increased that. There is the possibility that the design may evolve a bit further. We may add another door or two here or there, but generally, this is going to be the elevation, the general appearance of it. It's the 2 stories that we set into the hill, access to the first level down on the side that faces out, the north toward Stillwater Road, and the upper elevation accessed from the rear, the southern end, with doors to service that side. We've also included on the east side a couple of loading style doors that'll be 4 feet up at a grade that'll act as loading docks.
You heard it mentioned a few times tonight already is, for those who have been out to the site, I was out to the site, I don't know, it was a year ago, it was before some other issues, and it's a drastic improvement. I just hope you keep it this way.
Right. And Mr. Chairman, if I could say, part of the purpose, again, as was mentioned in the July meeting, part of the purpose of the new 60,000 square foot building would be to reduce the amount of storage that was happening elsewhere on the site. It would kind of condense that operation, into a built enclosed structure, obviously. And we've also provided, loading areas, truck parking areas, and areas for container storage that have been called out on the plan that will keep things to a more organized layout.
And Mr. Chairman, it's very likely that should you move to approval on this, we would include very specific conditions about property maintenance to make Mike's job easier in the future, to ensure that the site remains clean and tidy.
So, I want to hear from the rest of the board, but currently I'm in favor of moving it on to the zoning board, but in parallel to Rich's comments being addressed, comment that Pat just made, I think there's been great improvements on site, but I don't think your curb appeal is there, if you will. I know that's not the business you're in there, but I think, I don't know, it was Mike or Rich mentioned some landscape. You're right, across the street's the house, our residential neighborhood. I mean, I think people should be going to visit those houses across the street and say, wow, that looks really nice over there.
Right.
It's a tough combination mixing this industrial or commercial area
Right.
across the street from houses.
That's understood.
But I think you should make an investment, and you're obviously making a nice investment on the site. Yeah, some kind of screening and I think I'd like to, Pat, I'd like that to be included in there. It should be a wow, when someone drives by there, they should say, wow, this is really nice.
Right. Yeah, we're sensitive to the location and it being adjacent to residential uses. We have increased the size and scale and depth of the landscape buffer. We could pad that further. We're obviously, sensitive that we're trying to do it in a way that supplements the large evergreen hedge that's already through there.
You can't
So
come
we're,
up with small plantings. That's
right. So
Yeah, I think what they have
the size of your
proposed is sort of utilitarian screening. I think what you're getting to is more decorative landscaping to make it look
Yeah, I mean,
attractive
you're
as well.
removing that blue house right alongside comes down.
Yep.
I think you got a nice opportunity here to make this a nice-looking site.
Even possibly a berm, and then the tree on top of the berm, which would actually take away, that gives you that
some height.
5-6 feet of
That's a good
height
idea.
without even getting to the trees, before you even get to the trees. So
We
it
could look
starts you
that.
off at, a 5-foot berm.
We'd want to be sensitive to site distances and everything,
Agreed. And that's what I said,
everything
on
like
the
that, but
property,
we
not
can,
out on the road.
we can analyze it and see what's possible.
Your thoughts are that there'll be 2 entrances and exits. Is your thought to come in one and out the other? How are we going to do that?
Currently, it's thought of as it's a two-way at both entrance
The way it is
exits.
now, it's two-way, right? But
It's
what
two-way
happens
at
where
both
that blue
driveways.
What happens where that blue house is?
So on where the blue house is to the west of the site, we are proposing a new driveway that would be two-way.
Okay.
So that's been kind of graded into our plan. We've shown site distances from there, as was mentioned, with some very selective, pruning of just some vines, basically, that are growing on the.
Your hours of operation, and the only reason I ask that is because if you're exiting that, what will be a new driveway, it's fairly close to across the street as your neighbor. I wouldn't want truck lights shining through their house at midnight.
Sure. We've batted around, we've contemplated the idea of going to some kind of one-way route. I think, for the purposes of servicing, this large storage site, the preference would be to maintain a two-way access at both points, but we would be open to
Do you run
discussions.
a second shift? It's pretty much daytime hours for the most part.
Say that again?
Do you run a second shift, or is it mostly 9 to 5, 8 to 6?
My understanding is that their operation is typically not, like a 9 to 5,
I
a single
assume,
shift, yeah.
okay.
It's just kind of a regular business hours kind of operation.
Okay. Any questions from anyone else on the board? If not, we need a motion to send to the zoning board.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to refer this to the zoning board.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you stand to that? Okay, thank you. I didn't know you heard me.
Great, yeah, just stand ready for that.
Yeah.
All right.
Next on the agenda will be the teal door.
Good evening,
Okay,
Mr. Chairman.
Teal door, Counseling Center, 18 Miller Road. Mike?
We cleared up a bunch of the issues. We had a discussion on the phone the other day. There is two things that were not done yet. Setback envelope and the lot depth and width lines should be drawn on the actual map.
Okay.
I did not see them. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think so. And one other thing, for the variances that were granted in 88, if you put one asterisk on the zoning table, and the variances that were granted in 89, put two asterisks, just so we know which one was
Which
which.
is which.
Just to cover everything. It just makes it easier for us to try to figure out in the future. And that's it. Otherwise, you're all set with me.
Okay.
Rich?
So we recommended referral to Mayapack Fire Department. If there was any necessary improvements, that a bond would be needed. Applicant noted the comments. There are no site improvements. The department has no other additional comments related to this project, as long as they're not making any changes to the site itself.
We are not.
Pat, I don't believe you had any comments?
Nope, they've addressed all the site planning issues, Mr. Chairman.
Anyone on the board have any additional comments? If not, we'll send for a public hearing.
Okay.
Thank you for addressing
Okay.
the issues brought
Yeah,
up
I'm
previously.
sorry, I must have either missed those or,
Yeah, just get them on there. It complies.
okay, yeah, definitely
It complies. We'd like to see it actually on the plat, so this way, in the
Understood.
future, we know what we were doing.
As a matter of fact, I had to dig through a lot of previous applications, and as I was doing some of that research, some of the numbers didn't necessarily jive.
Sure.
So I just want to make sure, I wanted to make sure everything complied.
Yep.
So I addressed everything that I thought complied, well, everything.
It's just clarification with the asterisk, it just tells me which one was which year. Then I know
zoning.
which variance to go to see what the conditions were.
Understood.
So at the next meeting, we'll have a public hearing for you.
Okay, excellent.
Thank you, have a nice
Thank you very
evening.
much.
Thank you.
Good night.
Mahoban LLC, 737 South Lake Boulevard. Mike?
The applicant proposes to add a shed, and I assume he means a bathhouse, because sheds are not permitted, but a bathhouse would be, with a raised deck above, extend the dock to 25 feet. It's the width from the property line to property line, and the pergola to an existing vacant lot on South Lake Boulevard in Mayapack. This is an intense use for this small lot. The structures will tower over the adjacent lots. The state DOT has not approved the driveway that was added prior to the owner. He bought the lot with the driveway in, and it turned out to be a violation after the fact. The lot is 13.5 feet wide, and they are proposing a 13 by 13 shed, again, I guess, bathhouse, with a deck above. That means to get to the water, you'll have to walk through the structure to get there. There's no way to go around it. Parking calculation is incorrect. 1.3 spaces rounds up to 2, not down to 1. Lot width and lake frontage are not the same thing. Please correct. The width is the midpoint and the width of the lot, it's not necessarily the same as the frontage on the lake. This project needs to be referred to ECB for comments. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 variances that are required.
Thank you, Mike. Rich?
So this project is located in a 100-year floodplain. The town of Carmel floodplain permit is required. Referrals to the ECB and New York State DOT. The board has received correspondence from the New York State DOT on this. I neglected to mention the GML 239. It would have to be referred to Putnam County because of its proximity to a state or county road. So sorry. Joel did meet with me and we talked about it, so we addressed a whole bunch of my comments beforehand, Mr. Chairman. But for GML 239, I missed that one, so I do apologize. Just if you could show wetlands and buffer zone, which most likely the whole project is in that area.
Correct.
There is a proposed rain garden, if you can provide some details on that. And then the lakefront is 50 feet, however, only 15 feet is proposed, which is one of the variances that Mike has talked about.
Correct.
Thank you. Pat?
So as Mike indicated, there's a lot going on in this particular application. In addition to the extension of the dock, it's the shed or boathouse, whatever it's going to be defined as, a deck on top, a pergola next to it, an outdoor bar adjacent to it. And as I think some of you have seen the site, it's a very small site, so there's a lot going on there. The deck extension of the dock requires compliance with the private water-related facility provisions. And again, if this is a bathhouse, that also would have to comply with those provisions. If this is in fact a shed, and I don't know what the distinction would be, that's not a permitted use on this site, and they'd need a variance for that as well. There's a series of conditional requirements that have to be addressed for a private water-related facility. Things like, is it the owner who will use this property? So clarification of those things have to be done. The extension of the deck was not very specifically identified on the plans, and it shows a dimension of 25 feet, but are there piers, pilings, other sort of appurtenant structures that would extend beyond the 25 feet? So a detail of the dock is obviously required. Mike mentioned all the variances that would be required for this. The DOT issue, there have been 2 rounds of comments from DOT with respect to this, so they seem to have some concern about this application, so we need to hear from them explicitly. Mike mentioned the issue of the building extending property line to property line. That's an accessibility concern. It may also be a fire safety issue, so the fire department should take a look at this. If the boat's on fire and the shed's cluttered up or the door's locked, how do you get to the waterfront? The necessity to go through a building is a bit problematic with respect to this. We need to clarify utilities. Are there any utilities being provided in the shed or bathhouse, sanitary water, electric, all of that stuff? This is a small site, and on the waterfront, we always pay attention to exterior site lighting. So is anything going to be done? Presumably, there would be lighting with an outdoor deck and an outdoor bar, so that would have to be on the plan as well. And Rich mentioned that ECB needs to comment on this as well. So those are my comments, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Pat.
Can I just tell you the distinct between a shed and a bathhouse? A shed's an accessory use, and there's no house on here. So if it needs to be a shed, then it needs a use variance from the zoning board. That's what Pat's talking about. So the fact that you're allowed to do a bathhouse, but you would have to meet all the conditions of the private water-related facilities, and that's what I believe Pat's trying to say, right?
So before I open up to the board, just a simple, is it a shed? Is it a bathhouse? What is it?
Well, obviously, based on what Mike and Pat said, it's going to be a bathhouse.
Okay.
But if I can just comment, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Comments from the board?
Joel, do you have any renderings of what this new structure is going to look like?
We have the picture of the pergola. We haven't done anything on the shed yet, and based on what these comments, obviously, we're going to have to rethink the shed and where it's going to be and how it's going to sit on the site. So I think we want to go back to the drawing board on that.
Joe, I have a question. Go ahead, Bob.
Sure.
Go ahead, Bob.
I'd like to focus a little bit on what's going on at the water itself. I was there
Bob, can
today.
you speak into the microphone?
I was there today, and I observed a floating dock off of the wooden dock. What's the plan for that floating dock?
Well, if you look at the plan, our plan is to extend the docks at the 25-foot line, which is permitted by the code. And so that was the reason for that, and obviously,
But by my observation, the combination of the wooden dock that's there now, coupled with the floating dock, appears just by eyesight to be greater than 25 feet. So I'm asking, what is the plan for the floating dock?
I had a similar question to that, Bob, too, because I went out there also today, Joel, and it looks like you have a solid
okay.
dock
I
and
just
a
spoke,
floating dock.
the owner's behind me, and the floating dock will be removed, will be gone.
So can
I'm
we?
sorry?
The
will be
floating
removed?
dock will be gone once we, if we get the approval for the extension of the dock, then the floating dock would not be
So can we have
necessary.
that reflected on the plans?
Yes.
Yes,
And
of
then
course.
secondly, it doesn't show up on these renderings, but it's obviously the adjoining properties are very tight as well. And I don't understand how, particularly the fellow who's on the left side of the property, is going to have access to his current existing dock if you make your dock this wide.
Okay, we'll check into that, too.
And where would the boat, where would the boats, where are they going to be sitting?
Go ahead.
The gentleman, you mean on the left side, one facing the lake?
When facing the lake, one on the left side?
Yes, he comes within his property because it's about twice the size of my property. And the dock is currently right at the property edge, so there's plenty of room for,
But he
more
has
than
his
one
boat
boat
right-
to come
he has-
in.
But he has his boat right now, at least partly where your wooden dock would be created.
I also might mention, too, I don't know if you know, if you look very carefully at the survey, the dock if you're standing on, let's say, on 6 End to the right, is actually a part of our property.
Yeah, no, I
And
got that, yeah.
my client has spoken to the owner of that property, too, and he's basically agreed to remove that portion that's on our property.
But I still see, I don't see the room for your extension, the extended width of the dock over here, given that this guy's planning his boat, his docking his boat
Yes.
right in this area.
He comes in the middle of his property, which is about 25 or 30 feet
There's a
wide.
there's a boat, a dock over here, and a boat over here now.
Well, and it's quite obvious if that's the case, I haven't seen it.
It's like this.
This is basically in front of our property.
Well, this is New York State property, not your property.
Well, I mean,
Yes.
he's basically mooring his boat in front of our.
That's actually my boat,
Ah.
not his. His boat comes on the inside of his property, and there's actually a boat and a jet ski. And like I said, my neighbor's property is about 30 feet wide. There's plenty of room of anything to
Is
come
it-
and get in.
Is it possible to show on the renderings exactly what's next door on either side, on both sides?
Two lots on both sides.
Yeah,
That would be-
okay.
Certainly.
Let me say it on the record, yes.
Okay.
As Robert just said, what we'll do is on the next submission, we'll show the lots on both sides where they conduct their boats, and I think that
Great,
will solve the
that
problem.
would be great.
Yeah, given existing conditions, Matt.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you.
Oh, and let me just, before I go, the discussion about the DOT, we had a site inspection with one of the engineers from the DOT last week. So that generated that last letter, that email that was sent to the planning board. I think you have a copy of that?
Right, it was
Yes, and
emailed
we've
to
discussed,
you on the 13th.
we've discussed basically all of the issues that they want there. I mean, they want to make sure we have the proper site distance. And when the engineer was out there, we looked back and we looked both ways, and we'll show it on a drawing to show that we have the 200 feet of site distance, which is required by the state. And also, with regard to the drainage, if you've been out to the site, 6N is actually a little bit higher. So in effect, we're not putting water on the state road. The state, when you have a heavy rain, it's coming onto our property. So we'll address that. I think the only thing that we disagree with, if you've driven all along South Lake Boulevard, I think there's only one of those lots, lake lots, that actually has pavement going into the site. They've asked for a pavement 26 feet into the site. Our site is only like a little over 60 feet. So we're going to discuss that with them. And I think also, maybe Rich can either agree or disagree, but I think we're better off having that as a gravel area, so that when any water coming off 6N will come onto our property and absorb into the ground instead of going sheet flow toward the lake. But again, that's all the other items on that a comment letter from the state are, we're going to address all those items.
Joe,
Yes.
they do have quite a few pertaining to your driveway. As you saw the email.
I have the email, yes, of course.
Existing site distances, looking left and right, South Lake Boulevard. They're worried about the apron, and they did refer to 26 feet from the white line and stuff.
Yeah, all the other items there that we...
So there's quite a few things.
Oh, I know that. We discussed that with the engineer from the state, and the only thing we seem to disagree upon is the pavement.
So, we've all mentioned how small a piece of property this is. Nice spot, small piece of property. So, is your intent to put a shed, a pergola, and an outdoor bar and parking all on that property? And a rain garden.
Well, obviously, based on the comments, we're going to obviously condense or reduce the size of the improvements that we've shown on that property to
And
the
your
point.
intent is to put it on the dock or on the land? Like, where will it be?
Where will what be?
This shed?
Oh, it's all on the land.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you can't, right now, as I think Pat mentioned, it would take up the whole, so you're going to reduce?
No, of course. I said based on your comments. This is our first submission, obviously, and we welcome the comments from the board and the consultants, and we will then go back to the drawing boards and resubmit.
Okay.
Will
Okay.
anything be on the dock, Joel,
People,
other than people walking into the boat?
you gotta have a little
All
laughter.
structures and everything is going to be on the land.
No.
And can you show in the
No,
renderings
yes.
exactly where your boat will dock? Which side? Show.
Like I said, we're going to show the two
Yeah.
adjacent properties. We'll show the potential area where boats can
Okay.
dock. And again, I'm sorry. Again, if we have to make any adjustments to the plan, again, we welcome the comments, and we will look at them real hard and make any adjustments and resubmit.
Thank you.
Joe, I just want to clarify one, because it's like a no and a yes. I want to make sure we're talking about the same thing. The bathhouse, right, not a shed, the bar, the pergola is all going to be on land.
Correct.
The only thing I would ask is when you do come back, if you could have the item, show us on paper, on the map, where everything is going to be, so we can conceptualize and
Yeah,
understand.
actually, the location is on the map.
I mean, that's, okay.
All right, well, but we'll actually poche it in so that it's more
Yeah,
clear.
if you could-
We'll have like one color for this, another color for that, so it's very clear what we're doing.
Yeah, maybe a little larger drawing if possible. And you mentioned that you're going to have the calculations for site distances, or you mentioned that site distances are good. You need to provide those calculations. The DOT is going to need them. We're going to need them also.
No, well, as I said, as was just mentioned, Anthony mentioned that there's a whole list of things on the
Right, but
DOT
the actual
shopping list.
calculations with the slopes of the roads to understand speeds and the whole thing based on the site
That's
distance.
exactly what they're asking for. Correct.
Yeah, and Joel, the other thing too is, I think we were all out there today looking at the site, but the one side that's on the side going towards the high school, you have a stone wall there, which is really an impediment until you get out beyond it to be able to look. So, the applicant may want to consider, I've seen in other places with similar types of blockage, they have mirrors so they could see, as an idea. Because, I mean, safety is what one of our paramount concerns.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you saw the comment from the DOT, that's also obviously their concern too.
Yeah.
And ours. Okay, well,
Okay.
we'll get back to the drawing boards and we'll get back to you in due time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is Rudovic.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. Joel, is there a porta potty on that property also? Yes. Okay, there's also a porta potty on that
Oh,
property.
okay.
Just so the board knows.
If you went to the site, you probably didn't see it. because
I was at the site this afternoon.
Yeah, it's well screened, and it's actually.
It's against
You
that
speak in the
wall.
microphone? That's why I was asking about all the structures, so thanks, Rich.
Yeah,
Just pick that
it's
up
shown
right
on the
now.
map too, but maybe it's not that clear. But if you recall, on the left side, as you go into the property, there's a piece of stone wall that's, I guess, extends beyond that, and it's tucked in behind that, so it's not visible from the road.
This is the proverbial 10 pounds in a 5-pound bag. So, okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Rich, good point, thanks for bringing that up. Rudovic Bridal Shop, 1707 Route 6. You again, Joe? Mike?
The applicant proposes to remove a shed roof and change a retail storage building into a bridal shop on the corner of Route 6, Seminary Hill Road, and Church Street. The town right-of-way appears to be on the subject property, and the loading dock from this property is on Seminary Hill Road right-of-way. These issues should be addressed prior to final approval. Provide elevations. Are there any signs proposed? Provide details. If they need variances, you should get them when you go for all the other variances. You don't want to go back and forth if you don't have to. Provide a right turn only sign at the exit to Seminary Hill Road. That's a one-way road. You don't want somebody making a left out of there. Trash enclosure is access perpendicular to Seminary Hill Road. This seems to be a traffic issue, especially for a one-way road. Project needs to be referred to the ECB for comments, and there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 variances required, but they are almost all because of the existing conditions of the building, has nothing to do with anything they're doing.
Thank you. Rich?
So the applicant proposes to convert an existing building into a bridal salon. No additions or site improvements are being done. The department has no comments related to the projects as long as there are no changes being made. Referral to the Carmel Fire Department should be made. And also, as I did on the last one, I forgot to include GML 239N because it's on a state road. It fronts a state
Yes,
road on Route 6.
239, right.
And if there's any public improvements, there might have to be a performance bond associated engineering fee may be established. Most likely it won't be, but just a note for the board.
Pat?
So just to follow up on everybody's comments, I think most of you know the building. It used to be a rental business there. It's kind of like a barn building. It's in good shape, but it's a very, very conspicuous location. So attention needs to be paid to things like signage and lighting and if there are any modifications to the facade of the building, again, because it's such a prominent location, it needs to look great. The reuse of the building is terrific. This tends to be probably a fairly low traffic generator. I don't think it's a retail use that generates lots of peak hour traffic. I think it's probably by appointment only, so it may be a very low traffic generator. So in that sense, it's a great reuse of the building. As Mike indicated, there's a lot of variances that have to be addressed for the prior use. Joel, there's an overhanging portion of the building. Is that coming off?
Yeah, Mike had mentioned that roof is coming off.
I
That's
wasn't
correct.
clear about that.
By the parking area?
Yeah.
And you're absolutely correct about it's only by appointment. It's not, we're not looking for off-the-street traffic.
That's great. One question, the square footage of the building, it looks like there's a third story or partial second story.
There is
that-
there's the main floor, which comes in off Route 6.
Yeah.
There's the second floor, which comes off Seminary Hill Road.
And what's above
And then
that?
above that is, I guess, a big attic, if you
A
want to call it
loft, I
that.
guess you would call it?
So is that going to be used as storage for the business?
Yes, everything beyond the retail will be storage.
Okay.
And
So just
inventory.
clarify that, Joel, on the plans?
Sure.
And that may adjust your parking requirement. You may need another space or two because of that storage space.
Okay.
Otherwise, it's a good reuse of a building.
I like what you mentioned about it's a strategic location for us in town, right across from the reservoir, high traffic area, beautiful location. Are you going to be changing, I think the answer was no, but are you going to be changing anything architecturally, the appearance of the building, or?
No, the only thing that
You
we're
got a
going,
yes and a no? You're going to have to come up to the microphone.
actually, I can answer that. Basically, the only thing we're going to be doing, and as Mike added or said, we're going to be, at the next submission, we'll show the elevations. They just want to, obviously, since it's a retail store, a bridal shop, they want to enlarge some of the windows so they can have some displays. But aside from that, the shape of the building, the roof of the building, the architecture of the building is going to remain as, and as you said, it's been there for,
Yeah.
what, 50 years, 60 years?
It's a nice building.
Yeah, it's a beautiful building, and we certainly don't want to do anything to detract from its beautiful design.
Mike, do we have the details on the signage or lighting or anything?
No, that, the next submission, we just, again, this is the first submission, we just wanted to get your idea or your comments on the concept and everything. The next submission will have the elevations, the signs, and as Mike said, we'll obviously try to keep it within the code.
And we're going to stripe that parking lot?
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
Joel, the loading dock on, I'm over here.
Oh, I heard voices.
The
But your voice carries so much that's why I looked the other direction.
The loading
Oh,
dock-
yes, we have to talk about that.
Yeah,
right.
the loading dock on Seminary, is that going to be active, or?
Yes, that will be active to the entrance to the second floor. And again, because it's in the town right-of-way in this case, I discussed this with Mike Simone, and we discussed it with you. We're going to do some protection by putting a bollard on the side where the traffic is coming toward it, so that, I mean, it's been there all these years, nothing's happened, but let's be protected.
Right, so, Mr. Chairman, I want to ask a couple of questions, just so I have a better understanding of what that's going to be used for, because there is an extension out into the town right-of-way on Seminary Hill, where the loading dock is, and having grown up there.
I'm sorry, that loading dock, again, you'll see that in the elevation, that overhead door, that loading dock is gone.
Okay, so that's
So the
my
only thing
question.
on Seminary Hill will be that entrance into the building for the second floor, and there's 2 garages, which will
How do you
remain.
get to it?
Yeah,
Excuse me, I'm sorry, I don't
yeah,
mean
go
to-
ahead, Mike.
How do you get to that entrance? There's no sidewalks on either side.
Well, again, it's in the town,
Agreed, but it's still no sidewalk to it, so how are you going to safely get to it?
yeah,
Please,
watch,
please come up and speak into the microphone. We need you to speak into the
Yeah,
microphone.
you got to use the mic.
Hi, I'm Laura, sorry. I'm Laura Rudovic, the owner. I just want to explain it. In the back, we have a staircase, and the first floor is going directly upstairs. No one's walking through the back. That's just an emergency exit. Like if in case of a fire, you need to have a back exit. We're not loading anything, we're
Good.
not, because there's a staircase
Yeah,
that goes from the first floor retail right upstairs for a private bridal suite.
And a lift in between the 2 floors.
Correct, yeah,
That's
that's it.
important because they need that, sorry.
And one question, as you're looking at that loading dock that you say you're getting rid of, to the right of it, there seems to be like an old storefront
bay door.
entrance or something.
It's a bay door, I believe, isn't
Yeah,
it?
there's like a little door with
Yeah.
They
the,
look like a glass window or something,
that's what we, well, there's the garage looking
Yeah.
door where they had whatever, I don't know what they used it for.
Loading
We're-
dock.
We're taking that out.
But
There's
to
no-
the right of that, to the very corner of the building, closest to the
you
parking.
talk about the door all the way to the right?
Yes.
Okay, if you look at the site plan, what we're going to be doing there is, to the left of that door, there's an overhead door. And that door that you're talking about is going to come out, and another overhead door
Okay.
will be put in there for
Got it.
another parking space for the owner.
Got it.
Maybe I'm missing something. The wood plat and steps on the Seminary Hill side of the building will continue, correct?
For
Continue.
emergency
That's
exit
gonna be-
only.
That's going to be the.
For-
a secondary means
Emergency
of egress.
exit only.
Correct, yeah.
Okay, because there's no rail there, there's no,
Oh, no, obviously.
There
it's
will
gonna-
be a rail.
It's going to
okay.
be.
That's
the
my,
code. Oh,
right, so when I talk to Mike Simone about this, I want to be able to understand what's going to be there, because my concern is somebody walks out there, missteps,
Falls.
and is now in Seminary Hill. So there'll be an improvement made to what's presently there, including what we discussed, a possible bollard to block traffic coming in the one-way direction up Seminary Hill, and then other safety measures such as a handrail and things like
Code
that.
requirements, yep.
Okay.
100%, yeah.
But
Joel,
they're
that needs-
only using that for egress in the emergency.
It's
you
an
know.
emergency
It's
exit.
an emergency.
Yeah, and trucks won't be pulling
No, no,
up,
no.
dropping off 100 bridal gowns, right?
We don't even
No,
get deliveries
no,
there.
it's just 99 gallons. That's it.
Yeah.
UPS probably delivers most of your stuff anyway, right?
It's UPS, yeah.
UPS,
and-
there's no
And I'm still
18-wheelers
keeping it
and
as
stuff
the
like
old
that coming into the
Because the use in the past, when it was the feed barn, there were large trucks that would park there
my God.
for a
Dump
while and load and unload.
You could buy hay there. They would
Yeah.
dump off a whole
Yeah,
truckload
I
of hay
could
into
pull
the
up a
building.
pickup truck and
Yeah.
so
It was, like,
that,
ridiculous.
that whole use is going to be extinguished.
Totally.
Gone.
Yeah. Yeah, we're
Yeah,
just
right now, the
doing-
building is vacant.
Yeah, it's just, all we're trying to do is just appointments only, bridal shop. I have one in, town of Kent, the first house in Kent. So all we're doing is by appointments only. I'm doing downstairs for, mother of the brides and prom, and upstairs is bridal, just because they want their privacy. So there'll never be more than 2 customers there at a time.
And they'd come do fittings and things like that.
Right.
Fittings and stuff like that, that's it, yeah.
So Joel, add all of that as notes to the drawing so it's clear.
Oh, yeah, all the things we discussed today will be on the drawings, yes. Right, again, this is the first submission, we want to get your concept,
Yeah.
your idea of the concept. And I think as both the board, the consultants, and myself and the owner, we want to keep this building in,
We like the idea, we just want to make sure that Joe's points are addressed as well
Yeah,
as the
I'm
lighting and
sure,
everything else you
yeah,
mentioned here.
the proper easements or whatever we have to
It's a
do with the town.
Great
and-
location for us.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I love it. It's on the lake. It's
Yeah,
gonna
yeah.
be nice. I just wanna, all we're doing is just renovating, putting a paint job, because I wanna open as soon as possible. Because
Sure.
of the pandemic, I've been held back
Of course.
a lot, so.
Well, we hope to see you back here soon then.
Yes,
got a lot
you
of
will.
comments to address. and-
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Good night, and if I don't speak to you, have a happy Labor Day.
Thank
Two.
you.
You too.
And an end to the pandemic.
Let's hope.
Yeah. 14 Nicole Way. Mike?
Yeah, the applicant amended his proposal again to construct one building, parking, and outdoor storage on the corner of Nicole Way and Route 6 in Mayapack. The site is now accessed through Route 6. There is no bulk tank proposed on the property. People were asking that last time about a big tank that they're going to fill all the other tanks off of. What is the height of the retaining wall? Provide a detail of that retaining wall. Provide floor plans and elevations to confirm compliance with code. Landscape buffer plans are required. Dumpster enclosure details required. Provide the lot depth and lot width lines on the plat. They're here right now because this is their third change to this plan. They're trying to get a feeling, I assume, before they go and put every detail on there and
Fourth?
do it. Fourth?
That's,
Oh, I thought it was third, sorry.
Nope, fourth.
time flies when you're having fun, doesn't it?
Absolutely, 2.5 years worth.
Mike, anything else?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Rich?
Oh, signage, I'm sorry. Once you figure out your signage,
Yep.
let me know so we can get a detail.
So as Mike mentioned, this is a 1.41 acre parcel, 14 Nicole Way. The applicant has conceptually agreed with the DOT to have the entrance to the site off of Route 6. The building footprint has been reduced and the building has been moved closer to Route 6. The applicant acknowledged the plan submitted does not include all the requisite information, lighting, landscaping, drainage, as required by the planning board. They only want to discuss this new proposed layout with the board. It differs from the original, as Mike mentioned, single building versus 2, and the ingress and egress has been moved to Route 6 versus Nicole Way.
Thanks, Rich. Pat?
No further comments. This is the sketch. You've heard it described by Mike and Rich, so it's really your opportunity to comment on the suitability of this fourth iteration of the plan.
Yeah. Do you want to spend a few minutes and take us through your changes? Specifically, the entrance was on, or the exit out of your plant was on Nicole Way, now you've moved it down. You want to just summarize what's changed from submission
You can take
2
the
and
microphone
3
off
to
if you like,
submission
too.
4?
That's okay.
Okay, I didn't know if you want to walk up there.
Thank you.
So in previous iterations with multiple buildings and with a single building, the last iteration was only a single building, the access was off of Nicole Way, and there seemed to be opposition from all around about access off of Nicole Way. And of course, we all met with the DOT out there, and they kind of wanted the entranceway a little bit further to the east.
our traffic consultants, Mazer, Phil Greeley from Mazer, convinced the DOT that the best option, without causing a lot of earthwork, if you will, is the current location as shown in this latest iteration, which is 150 feet approximately center line to center line from Nicole Way. Also, some of the comments, we're trying to be considerate, more considerate, which we thought we were very considerate anyway previously to the neighbors to the rear, is we pretty much moved the building as close to Route 6 and as far east as we can on the site. We're looking to, you have the shaded rendition there, the dark green area is perhaps suggesting as much vegetation that's natural remains on the site to stay if that's agreeable to the board. Also, the building has slightly reduced in size as well. So those are, I mean, every step along the way, we made concessions. This is the last shot, guys.
Bob, go ahead.
Yeah, I think the last time you were here, this was going to be an oil
Storage,
business.
that's correct.
Has that changed, or
That
is
has not changed.
So, with the current changes that you're contemplating, how does that affect the business that you were planning or doing, or if you just spend a couple minutes on that?
Okay.
There is no change to the current use of the building. The use of the building is to store my oil trucks inside the storage area or the center of the building. And then there's we're proposing, I think, 1,000 square feet of either office retail, however we want to break it up. So I have an office/retail on the left side of the building to give it character, and an office/retail on the right side of the building to give it character. And then my outdoor storage area for my propane trucks would be on the side of the building that's fenced in, so that it has no effect, no change on anything.
Could you just point where the...
Right side of the building.
The right side. So the oil trucks are going there?
Yep.
Okay.
Oil trucks will be parked inside.
Inside, so
Yes.
what's on the right side? Propane tanks. Got it. That's it, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anthony, Ray, you have any comments?
I certainly appreciate the time you put in and the iterations of the drawings. I'm happy to see that we have the entrance on Route 6 now. So I think it's come a long way, and I'm happy to see where we're at right now with it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I did what Anthony says. It's, you know, obviously I was out there with Mike Simone, the Highway Department. I was out there with Rich and others. I, for one, feel much more comfortable with 150 feet down. I think you should fully develop it. I mean, this is in my mind, the best. It was all about safety with me previously, about crossing over Route 6, about line of sight. You had that berm to your left when you're leaving. This seems a lot better to me.
I agree.
Agreed.
The only question I have is, and I agree with them, I think this is, we're going in the right direction. When you're standing on Route 6, I mean, literally, that rise is at least 6-7 feet high. So my question is, when you're coming out of that driveway, are you going to do something to reduce?
I have to cut down both sides of the property from Nicole Way all the way down to the end of my property, which is 307 feet, if I'm not mistaken. I have to reduce that grade all the way back and then cut my driveway in and then come back up again. If you look at one of the pages, there is a detail of the engineer did just to show the grades coming in. But the lower side of the property is where my building would sit at the current grade. Where it is now, we're cutting out, I believe, 7 feet out of the initial coming in off of the road, and also cutting the entire hill back all the way up to Nicole Way, I believe 20 or 30 feet back, whatever the numbers are, just to shave everything back so we have more than enough sight distance that you'll be able to see forever.
Right, and that's being driven by the DOT's
That
requirements,
is correct.
right?
Yeah.
That is correct.
But it's better than cutting further down, because that would have been 10 feet, correct?
I couldn't cut further
That's what I mean,
down.
it's
That was,
huge down
this
there.
was what I came up with and said to my architect and engineer, let's get a hold of the DOT, see if we can do this. If we can, let's design it and get it into them and see if we can do it.
Because it gets higher as you go down, correct?
It's,
We brought in a cartoon, if you will, somewhere in between scheme 1 and 2, or 2 and this scheme here, where we show the buildings further east.
Yeah.
And the amount of cuts and
Yep.
what we had to do, and it was really,
Well, it pushed the building back further too, because to cut, you had to get your slopes, so.
well, again, we wanted the building to fit into the
Sure.
site, not bastardize the whole site in order to fit the building.
Correct.
So-
This is much better, big improvement.
So, not that.
Let's further develop it, right? Let's
Yes,
develop
we
it.
want to get to that next
Okay.
point
Yes.
and cross the Ts and dot the Is, but again, a third time going through the expense, if the board really didn't even see favorable to this
We're-
concept.
You heard us here. This is the best iteration we've seen. Yeah.
thank you.
Okay, very good, thank you very much.
And, we also serve as the architectural review board, so
100%,
we'll
yes.
need some building information.
Yeah,
That's-
this will be the
yeah.
third time.
Fourth.
Design the building.
Well, hey.
No problem at all.
You know, let's all persevere together on this.
Okay, thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you. Centennial Golf Club, Fair Street.
Is it okay if I put this down, or?
Yeah, just as long as you're 6 feet away from it, very sure. Mike?
It's basically the same memo as it's been in the past, but the numbers changed slightly. Current town zoning code for residential cluster developments allows an applicant to develop at 120,000 square feet per lot. Old zoning for this lot was 60/40. They have sewer and water, so they would have been allowed to use the 40, which is approximately an acre. So they're trying to get back to the 40,000 square feet, is what he was discussing originally, and they want to do 4 units per acre, which is only 12 times the permitted density everybody else will get in the town. Setbacks from the front yard should be at least 40 feet. I don't know if that was changed. I didn't see that as one of the changes. Everything else in our town, if you're building a house on an acre, you would definitely need to have a 40-foot setback, so a 40-foot tall building should be at least that far back. The open space, I still ask that we put something in there to protect the town, that it's perpetually restricted. Just make sure the attorneys see all that. And last, this really is spot zoning. There's no other parcel in the town of Carmel that can meet the criteria of this code. We have 2 other golf courses, and they're not even, one's a public and one's a private, and there's no other thing, so that's my opinion on that. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Rich?
This is on for zoning changes, so there's no engineering comments yet until they try to develop it, or soon will develop it whenever they do it.
Pat?
No further comments, Mr. Chairman. This is a continuation of the discussion that was started some time ago.
So maybe the best way for us all to start, before I turn it over to the board, is for you to tell us, summarize what's changed since the last time, what's new, what do you want to update us on?
Well, we are here tonight to respond to all the comments from the last meeting. We are in our 22nd year of operating this golf course. We're trying to make sure we can keep the golf course. We think we've responded to all the questions. Our professionals will answer those questions. And we can, make changes to help this out. This is a text amendment we're asking, not spot zoning. And our professionals will take over now and respond to any other
Okay.
questions you might have.
Yeah, no, please.
Right, so just to reiterate what Peter was saying, they're undertaking a zoning text amendment to allow for residential development on part of the site so that they can continue to provide the golf course amenities. I'll just briefly go through some of the changes, which I know that Mr. Carnazza went through a little bit. We did bring the density down to 4 dwelling units per acre. We did say that access could be off a county, town, or state road. We did increase the number of parking spaces for all residential units to 2 spaces. And for visitor parking, we increased it from 15% to 20%. The recreation area that must be provided, we increased from 50 square feet to 200 square feet. And that pretty much sums up the changes that we've been making to try and appease some of the issues that have come up. Larry's going to go through the site plan again, just to kind of talk through how the density has changed.
Larry, yeah,
You're gonna
we
need a
can, but the
microphone.
you could probably take that mic over with you. We could hear you, but the TV cannot.
Gotcha.
Also, do you need the, something to face the camera there?
Do you have two?
To what?
Two of the same maps?
One for
The
the
camera
camera?
wants to see also.
I do not. So how do you want me to do it?
Just talk to it the best you can, maybe describe the,
Okay.
what's on the
will
map.
do. Will do. Well, again, thank you very much. This plan has been presented since last fall, so it's nothing new. Nothing has changed to it. It's still the 96 units. But I wanted to bring a couple of clarifications up to help understand what we're trying to do. We have clarification on how the density is calculated. This is proposed for 40-acre parcels. The minimum size in the text amendment is 20, so we're at 40. When you deduct 10% for the roads, the net area for calculation is 36. We reduce the net area of the density calc from 6 to 4. So you multiply 4 times 36 and you get 144. But also in that text amendment is a maximum of 100. So the 100 would kick in instead of the 144, it would be 100. This project total is 96, and again, that's unchanged. The ratio here, we have the idea is that the applicant would have to provide an equal area of the parcel size and deed-restricted open space. So we talked about this last time, and I want to be clear with everybody on where that is. This is the clubhouse here to get you oriented. Fair Street, John Simpson. This is the town line. This area up here consists of the Fairway 9s 2 through 8. This entire area here, all the way up to here, so the entire frontage along Kelly Ridge would be deed restricted. That area is more than 1-to-1, it's 52.5. The balance of the land, just bear with me as I work through this. The balance of the land is 94.9 acres. That consists of lakes 7 and 9, fairways 1 and 9 in the clubhouse, and vegetated and wetland areas. So we have 52.5 acres deed restricted, 94.9, which is either golf or vegetated areas, and then the remaining 40 is the project. So that totals the 187.4, which makes up the three parcels. The other thing I want to note, and then I'm going to turn it over to Bill, the putting in this 100-unit max on a 40-acre project, effectively the density goes down to 2.8. All right, so the benchmark is 25, right? 25 times 4 is 100, so that's the benchmark. Anything over 25 acres, the density will increase, as the area goes up. So again, in this case, 40 acres. When you do the calculations, the density actually effectively is 2.8. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Bill, and any questions that you have, we're here to answer them. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bear with me.
Good evening.
Hi, Bill.
I promised your counsel I'd be brief, and I'm going to be brief. First of all, okay if the mask is off?
Yeah.
I want to thank you all for your professionalism. I want to thank you all for your comments, and I want to thank you for the comments that we have integrated into our project. Again, I think you've been professional and you've given us a fair opportunity to be heard, and for that, I thank you. I don't have to tell you that this is a very important decision that this board is making. It's important for the town of Carmel, and it's important for the hamlet. I consider the consequences to be very, very large as you decide and deliberate as to which way you're going to recommend, either favorably, not at all, or negatively. There are certain irrefutable facts that I want just to emphasize to you. First of all, I consider this part of the hamlet the jewel of the hamlet, and it consists of a campus, if you will. And the campus consists of the bar and the restaurant, the golf course, the banquet center. It's a true important part of not only the town of Carmel, but the hamlet of Carmel as well. It's irrefutable that it would be very, very sad if this were to be lost. It's irrefutable that there are 70 jobs currently involved in this area. It's irrefutable that if you move this ahead and the project is approved, you'll gain a great deal of open space, which is consistent with your dictate in the Greenway Pact. It's irrefutable that Kelly Ridge would never be bothered because of the cluster by any other development. These are all very important criteria that I hope you'll consider as you deliberate, and know that without question they are all in jeopardy if the matter does not go forward. An approval will enhance recreation, will increase social opportunities. It will create and preserve panoramic views, open space, deed restrictions. It'll keep jobs, it'll create jobs. I'm going to try as closely and as quickly as I can to define what it is we're looking for. And in 2 words, it's a zone change. That's what we're looking for. And a zone change is defined in your code under 15676 and 273 of the town law. It's a zone change through a text amendment, but it's a zone change. And a zone change is a fundamental opportunity for you to allow a use that otherwise would not be permitted in. It's a tool to use in a dynamic city, village, whatever, that would allow something that belongs in the town to go without a complete change in the ordinance. It provides for flexibility. It is not remotely tucked somewhere. It's front and center as a right that this board has to pass over to the town board where there's a use that you think should be there that perhaps wouldn't be there otherwise. And so I ask you to consider the fact that this isn't something that's remote or something. This is a fundamental tool that the planning board has. In addition to zone change, there's 2 concepts that I just want you to remember, and one is the Greenway Pact, which dictates to you to try to gain, preserve green space, open space where the opportunity exists. In this case, you'd be gaining 59 acres from my client's deed restriction. And the deed restriction could, as the chairman suggested, be a reverter, in which case if the golf course ever stopped, instead of it being open space, it could be used for a use that the town of Carmel at the time would think would be more advantageous. And the second component that's part of this is that of conditional zoning. Conditional zoning is permitted in case law. The case is Church, and it says, and I quote, "Zoning changes can be conditioned upon items calculated to best serve the community." That's what we propose here. A zone change together with a condition, the condition being that we forfeit and turn over to the town acreage that you can use in its wisdom at the time, if and when the golf course ever ceases to do business. So the chairman came up with what I thought was a very good idea, that instead of a perpetual restriction, if and when the golf course stopped doing business, it's 59 acres. The chairman characterized it as important property, potentially important property, right in the hamlet of Carmel. It doesn't have to be deed restricted, but that's what we offer, or a reverter, which in this case, if the golf course ceased doing business, the town could do with it what it wanted to do with it. This concept, this deed restriction, this offer that was pro-offered and first brought up by the town, is clearly a benefit to the town, and it would defeat any challenges by someone arguing that it was spot zoning, because not only is it a site-neutral text amendment, but there's conditions, and under church it says if the benefits to the town inure from the condition, then it defeats any challenge that might come to it. I'm not going to go into the background except to tell you that in 2002 there were 30 million golfers. In 2018 there were 18 million golfers. Play has lessened, outings have lessened, membership has lessened. At the time my client started his 27-hole golf course, it was fashionable, it was feasible to do 27 holes. Can't do it now. It's over. And that's the reason we're here today. And I don't have to tell you, I know you all know about the problem that golf courses are having. There's a golf course in Rochester that just closed down this year. It was called Sagamore, and it became a public park. My family has a lake house in Pennsylvania. Of course, we played all the time in Scranton. Scranton Municipal Golf Course has just closed down for warehousing. It's happening in Long Island, it's happening in Westchester, it's happening in upstate. And I truly, truly hope it doesn't happen here. On the issue of the law, I provided you what I believe is enough to give a favorable recommendation. Coupled with the condition of the deed restriction is a gender-neutral text amendment. And I believe by anybody's review, it inures to the benefit of the town. I told you of the town benefits that would follow if this board did feel it appropriate to give a favorable recommendation. The golf course, the restaurant, all those things that I've mentioned a number of times, and I won't mention them again. The town is better served by a favorable recommendation, especially when one considers the alternative. I want to talk to you about Amenia very briefly. Silo Ridge, financial straits, terrible, terrible times, shut down for a period of time. The town took it upon itself to create, through zone change, a new district, and it was called Resort Development District, where they kept the golf course, they took conservation easements, they took a dedication from the sponsor, just like today, and today there's a thriving golf course, and there's an entitlement for 200 residences there. This is what zone change was put in there for, to meet a demand, to meet a change that the board wanted to see continued or created. I want to talk very briefly about 15676. That is planning board involvement. In the section of the code that talks about your involvement, it says, quote, "The planning board need not confine its recommendation to the proposed amendment, but may revise the proposed amendment if the planning board is of the opinion that such revision is in accord with the furtherance and the purposes of this chapter." That's exactly what's happened here. You guys have come up with ideas. All of them have been incorporated into the plan that Larry and Karen just went over with you. I won't go over them. Larry and Karen did. But the parking and the rec space and all those things, and the chairman's thought about the reverter, have all been accepted and incorporated into the project. So I'll conclude just by saying I ask you please, as a town person all my life, and as the attorney for the applicant, please consider the positive consequences that would ensue if this board were to give a favorable recommendation. I think it's the best interest of the town. I think the parade of horribles that would happen afterwards, you're well aware of. We want this golf course to stay. You should want the golf course to stay with the open space that it would gather. The condition that makes it easier for you to give a favorable recommendation. Again, I want to thank you very, very much for your time and your attention to this matter.
Thank you, Bill.
Okay.
So for the planning board, you heard Bill mention it, but our job here tonight is to either make a positive, negative, or neutral recommendation to the town board. We will not be the deciding factor here, the town board will, but we need to make a recommendation. So let me open it up for questions to the board here.
I'm interested in finding out, on section B, residential development, paragraph 3. The original version included a reference to 156-45E. This latest iteration removes it and simply defines the density as taking total space, then 10%, and then doing a calculation. So when I do a quick calculation, removing that code didn't really benefit you. So my question is, why was it removed?
That's a great question. We put it in there because we thought that was the code that we should comply with. It seemed like the most restrictive, the one that was kind of looking to preserve land in the way that was kind of meant to happen here. But as it turns out, there is no environmental constraints map on file with the town, and we took the time, Larry here contacted several people here at the town. There is no map that exists any longer. And what's in place of that is exactly what we've written here, which is taking 10% out to account for roads and utilities.
But if there was no environmental constraints, then you wouldn't have been harmed by just leaving the code in there.
Well, I think, you know, it's your code ultimately, right? But if there's no map, to leave something in there that's referring to something that doesn't exist seemed like it could potentially set you up into a place where you would have to amend it in the future. I mean, certainly this is up for discussion, and we are not fixed to this necessarily. I think we were just trying to do what made the most sense, and it wasn't deceitful, you know, in its intent.
But you're using the 1 acre zoning, correct?
I'm not sure what you mean.
You're not using 3 acres per lot to get your total lot count. You're using 1 acre, correct?
Okay, so I just want to make sure I understand. The calculation for the cluster under the text amendment is taking the parcel size, which is 40 acres, subtracting 10% for the roads, so we get 36, and then you times that by 4.
Times it by 4, so you're doing the upzone, okay.
Yeah,
So you're not really doing the cluster.
Right,
All
correct. Correct.
Thank you. I
Right.
just want to make sure that
Okay.
I wasn't missing something, because
Right.
when you
No,
first
no,
said it before.
no, you're not.
I
Right.
thought that you were saying that you did cluster because of the size of the lots with today's zoning.
Right, no.
And you came up with your number, and I'm going, well, then
Right.
you have no problem. Let's
Right.
drop, forget about the
Right.
amendment. You're okay to do it through what's allowed, but
Right.
I see. So you
Okay.
did the 12 times what you're permitted.
Right.
And came up with that number.
Right.
Got it. Thank you.
Right.
Larry,
And
is
then,
10% enough?
as I stated, on a 40-acre parcel,
Say it
on a
again.
40-acre parcel, right, the max is 100. So even though through that calculation it went to 144, the max is 100. So then when you divide that out, the effective density is 2.8.
Got it.
Okay, thank you.
That's our cluster code. That's our cluster code.
Right, so just to follow up on Mike's point, the point of that conversation is that this is a proposed amendment. It's not relying on our existing code in any way. They're changing the code to suit their objectives. That's what we're dealing with here, an entirely new code. So obviously, they've designed it to suit their purposes specifically. We have to determine if it's appropriate for the town in general. But it's, as Mike was sort of wrestling with, it's not dealing with our existing code. It's replacing it with a new provision entirely for what we're talking about tonight.
So, Rich, Mike, Pat, we all know there's a town master plan underway. I don't think any of you know the exact date when that'll be done. What about the year when you think that'll be done? Is that, I don't mean to box anybody into a corner, just an estimate of the time?
I think, Mr. Chairman, it's very difficult to estimate time in
Yeah.
the period of COVID and when meetings are difficult to happen. I don't know that anyone can give you a definitive date.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
not 10 years down the road, it's probably not next week, it's somewhere between.
Yeah, no,
Is that
that's why I
close enough?
that's why I kind of phrased it that way, because I'm trying to look at it compared to golf seasons, right? This was a pretty good golf season, I would imagine, other than catering and events. Golf courses are crowded, right? I was just trying to get a feel for that, Pat. You know, we're definitely making a one-off here to, as you mentioned, Pat, suit someone's needs. What does that do to the other developers in town and want to come in and?
So that's the challenge you have, and you've heard the discussion about spot zoning. So
Yep.
obviously, the developer is proposing something that suits them, but they have to develop zoning that's also theoretically applicable elsewhere, or else it would be spot zoning, absolutely. So there is a consequence associated with this zoning elsewhere in the community. So that's something we need to bear in mind. It will affect, potentially, it could affect other properties as well. And it sort of has to, otherwise it's spot zoning.
Well, by the terms of the proposed text, they're saying that they're limiting it to
Golf courses.
Country golf clubs, including country golf, swim, tennis, and other court games. And we know from Mike that the only 2 golf courses in the town wouldn't apply to them.
How big's the lot have to be, because it may apply to Willowwood Gun Range.
Right.
Right.
That's a country club by definition. I don't know if they are. The other one got the interpretation from the courts.
Yeah.
So I think there's enough there to suggest it's potentially applicable elsewhere.
Except isn't there a water and sewer application in
Yeah.
those? So none of those.
None of them.
Willowwood doesn't have it, Putnam County Game doesn't have it.
But again, I think
Putnam
from their
County Golf Club
perspective,
doesn't.
could an
doesn't have
improvement be made to bring sewer or water to another site? Possibly. That would then make them eligible. So that's where I think the applicant's coming with respect to this. There's a potential to make it applicable elsewhere.
Respectfully, Pat, I think it's almost an undaunting task, considering you're in the New York City DEP
Yeah,
watershed.
Rich, I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm
Just letting the
I'm
board know.
trying to sort of address this spot zoning issue to the best of my ability without definitively saying, of course, it's spot zoning. They've left an opening to argue that it's not.
We've put out on the table spot zoning. Tonight I heard from Mr. Schilling, conditional zoning changes. Joe, would that be considered all one and the same spot changes, conditional zoning changes? Is it all?
I don't know, I don't understand your question.
Well, we talked about this as potentially spot zoning changes. Today it was mentioned from Mr. Schilling that it's a conditional zoning change. Are we talking the same, we're still talking the same thing, apples to apples, or?
No, they're conceptually, they're different.
They are different, Anthony, and I've indicated that I sort of disagree with Bill's opinion about whether this is conditional zoning or not. He's added some additional pieces this evening that support the argument of conditional zoning, but it requires a little more thought than what we're giving to it at the moment to put it into one of those pigeonholes. I think you need not worry about that. It's a concept that you're talking about tonight, and it's the town board's obligation to worry about the details with respect to this. I think your task tonight is to sort of get your arms around the concept, and then either send it in a particular direction for the details to be worked out as it moves through the process.
So obviously, our job tonight is to make a recommendation.
Mr. Chairman, could I just make one statement? There is a means to an end, and the means to the end in this instance is a zone change through a text amendment. This is a hybrid application, and Church says that if there is a condition imposed by the municipality accepted by the applicant, And oftentimes, it's in the form of deed restrictions. And spot zoning does not apply as long as the court ultimately will find that the benefit was not isolated to the applicant, but inured to the town, the entire town. So I understand, first of all, it's a neutral site text amendment. So Rich and Mike are mentioning the word spot zoning, and I get it, even though there are 3 potential sites that it could favor. But the text amendment, which is the means to the end, coupled with the condition that was flitted about by the town board, and if you deem that condition, which in this case is a 59-acre deed restriction or reverter to the town, we would sustain any challenge that would be made in the ambit of spot zoning. That I am absolutely certain of.
Okay. Now, if this was not approved by the town board, the options would be then to develop as per our code, which should be 3-acre zoning.
Or cluster development.
That is,
Or a
we still have to
cluster.
do 3 acres with cluster.
Right. And that's what our zoning permits today.
That's correct. So the applicant's not left without options.
Correct, correct. It doesn't mean, there's options, you're right.
Right, and obviously,
Right.
we would lose the benefits that you heard described this evening about the preservation of a portion of the golf course and the
Well,
preservation of open space.
There'd still be a lot of acres of wetlands and
That's right.
green
That's not to
space.
say you
and-
could not obtain open space preservation through a cluster subdivision, for example. So
Right.
It doesn't preclude those things necessarily.
And if it was reverted back, it wouldn't be on the tax rolls anymore.
True. Does anyone out on the planning board have a recommendation? Go ahead.
Thank you. As far as the option, the text amendment allows, 96 units. The as of right would be probably half that, just so you know.
Mr. Chairman, my suggestion would be that a motion be made either referring the matter back to the town board with a positive recommendation, a negative recommendation, or a neutral recommendation, and then you can add whatever discussion you wish to incorporate, or perhaps direct Pat to draft a resolution incorporating some of the issues, positive, negative, or neutral, in favor of the board's vote.
Yes, so Joe's right, this needs to be a deliberative response to the town board. If you choose to make a positive or a negative recommendation, you can just send it back neutrally, I suppose, with no commentary, which isn't very helpful to the town board. So I think the benefit here is a positive or a negative recommendation that would need to be fully articulated in a document that Joe and I and Rich and Mike would help you prepare.
So I can make the motion, right, Pat? Can I make the motion?
You certainly
Mr. Chairman? So I would make a negative recommendation to the town board based on, there's a master plan underway. There are other options available that do fit our zoning. And I think those, if necessary, should be pursued.
I would second the chairman's motion.
I would add just, I agree with that. I would add just one other point. I'm not convinced of the economic benefits of this to the town. I'm concerned about those, and I would want the town, as part of its comprehensive planning, to weigh those issues and to come up with a way of development, or not have a development based on those issues.
We have 3 in favor. Anthony?
I'm going to go with a negative recommendation for the reasons, Mr. Chairman, that you mentioned, based on what our current town code is, with the master plan in place, the fact that there are other options. And I'll leave it at that.
So there was a motion made by the chairman. Was that motion seconded?
It was by right.
Okay, so I would ask Pat to call a roll call vote with respect to the motion to return a negative finding to the town board, essentially in opposition to the proposed text amendment.
All those for the motion, Ray?
For the motion.
Anthony?
For the motion.
Bob?
For the motion.
Mr. Chairman?
For the motion.
That's 4-0, Joe.
Now, Mr. Chairman, the other thing would be with respect to the motion, do you want us to prepare a document in support of that motion to go back to the town board in order to assist them in their further consideration of this?
I think that'd be helpful, and I think that's the right thing to do for
So what I
the,
would suggest is that document be returned to you for review, to then be referred to the town board.
that's fine.
Okay, we'll
Thank
do
you.
that.
Thanks, Joe. Okay, thank you. Yankee Development for an extension of the subdivision approval. Thank you for sitting through. I saw you here when I got here, so I guess not much on TV tonight anyway. Mike?
This is on for an extension.